All right, Algebra 1, this is a most exciting video because I'm finally gonna be applying your graphing calculator that I wanted you to buy for lots of money. We're actually gonna be using it today. And hopefully today serves as kind of an introduction for how to use your calculator in general to graph, to find some points, to find intersections, and things like that. So the essential question for today is, how can I use the following buttons to help me solve a systems of equations? I'm going to show you how to use the y equals button, the window button, the calc button, the graph button, and the table buttons. It might be good just to take a while to figure out where those are. So make sure you have your graphing calculator out with you. I don't know if you can see my tiny little dot. I'm kind of moving it around over here. I think this will show up on the screen capture. It should. Here's a y equals. We'll be using that. Here's the window. We'll be using that. Here's the calc button above the trace. And then table and graph are in the same button. So I'm going to be showing you how to use those things. They're all used to do graphing stuff. How I'm going to frame this instruction is by solving this extraordinarily complicated systems of equations. This has a ton of decimals in it and is not pleasant at all. I could maybe set it up for substitution, but there are no easy variables to isolate here. I could maybe try elimination, but there's no easy multiplication fix. So I think actually the easiest thing to do here would be to solve using graphing. The issue is every time we've solved using graphing before, we've had, our nice little perfect lines, and we had the dots going like this, and they always intersected in a point that was whole numbers. And I'm pretty sure that because of all these decimals, they're not going to work out this nicely. Luckily, we have our calculator at our disposal, and our calculator can find the intersection of two lines for us. So let's talk about how we can use the graphing calculator to do that. If you turn your calculator on and then hit the y equals menu, which is this upper left button, you'll see that you can put graphs in here. This is where you insert functions that you want your calculator to graph. However, if you notice, it always says y equals, y equals, y equals. And that's because your graphing calculator is not going to be able to graph this line unless we isolate the y. So I need to do a little preliminary work first. Let's isolate the y. So in this top equation, I'm subtracting 249.2x to the other side. This is super ugly, and I'm not even writing properly. I must be in a very tizzied mood today. And then I'm adding 1900. Okay, next I need to divide through by 20. So divided by 20, divided by 20. Oh man. Okay, so y equals, let's do 249.2 divided by 20. Okay, it's negative 12.46x. And then 1900. This should come out as a whole number at least. 95. Okay, so here's my one function. I'll be able to put that into my graph. Let's just go ahead and get the other function as well. So add this to the other side, add that x term. And again, we've totally done this like a million times. You just, maybe haven't done it with this complicated numbers. And now I'm dividing by 15.5. That's really, really ugly. 15.5 divided by 15.5. Okay, so here's my first function. My other function is going to be y equals, let's see, 56.885 divided by 15.5. Oh boy. Let's round this to 3.67x. I'll just round to two decimals. Generally, it's not good practice, but I did intend this to be kind of roundable, if that makes sense. And my other one at least comes out as a whole number. Negative 1984 divided by 15.5. 1984, great year, great year. Okay, so I have my two functions. Let's go ahead and put these both into our y equals menu, and we can graph multiple lines at once. So first one, negative 12.46 plus 95. If you hit enter, notice that this little equal sign is highlighted, which means the graphing calculator will be graphing that. I forgot the x, so that's not a good idea. Let's use insert. I'll put the x there. Oops, I messed it up. Here, 6x. So just so you know, your x key is this one right next to the second. Okay, so the x is in. Next, 3.67x minus 128. Okay, great. So when I hit graph is this button over on the right, it should graph these lines. So let's hit graph and see what it does. Okay, well, there's one line, but like there should be two lines there. Where's the other line? And the issue is here that these lines actually, take a look at these y-intercepts. This is a y-intercept of negative 128. This is a y-intercept of 95, and I have really just outrageous slopes. So as it turns out, my calculator, its window is not scaled properly. When we turn our calculator on, it defaults to having a maximum of 10, a minimum of negative 10, a maximum of 10 on the y, and a minimum of negative 10 on the y. So in other words, it's showing the graphs that I give to you always on paper. It only goes up to a 10 of x, it only goes down to a negative 10 of x, and so on. And I need to make this window bigger. So let's go over to window. I need to make it bigger. You can see right now exactly what I showed you kind of on the screen. The x minimum is negative 10. The x maximum is positive 10. Likewise with the y's. Well, instead of ranging from negative 10 to positive 10, let's go from negative 100 to positive 100. Now we're making our graph bigger. And let's go from a y of negative 100 to a y of positive 100. So I'm going to change my minimum from negative 10 to negative 100. I'm going to change my x max from 10 to 100. And same with the y's. So this is going to spread out my graph more. This is going to, now we're going like 10, 20, 30. Let's see what the graph looks like now. You can notice that my axes are more kind of dark because they're including many more tick lines. I'm including 100 tick lines, so they all kind of bunch on top of each other. And now we can see this other line. This was the line we could see before, but now that I've made my window bigger, I can see this other line as well. Nice. So it looks like my lines, let me get rid of this extraneous stuff, but when I scale it from negative 100 to 100, it looks like my lines are doing something like this. Now, we know that the solution is whatever point this is. Now, what you could do is you could just start arrowing around, and you will get a cursor. However, this cursor is extremely inaccurate, and you never want to just arrow around to do the intersection point. Your calculator actually has a button that will find the intersection point for you. So here's what you do. I want to go into the calc menu. The calc menu has many, many interesting functions. So I'm going to hit second calc. The reason you have to hit second is because calc is not actually a button. Calc is like, the little blue part above the button. You have to hit second to access it. So let's take a look at these functions. We have value, we have 0, we're going to use that later on in the year. Minimum, maximum, we're going to use later on in the year. But the function that I'm interested in right now is intersect, because obviously intersect is going to give us the intersection between two lines. So second calc, and then I'll hit intersect. Now intersect, it's going to do something, but I actually need to help out the calculator. So right now the calculator says first curve, and if I arrow to the right or left, you notice that the cursor stays right along that first line. Basically, the calculator is saying, hey, I need you to help me out. I don't know exactly where the intersection point is. You need to show me where you think it is. So you want to put this cursor as close as possible to the intersection point. So right about here is good, and hit enter. Now it'll say second curve. And again, if you arrow along, you can arrow along the line. But here again, you want to put your cursor as close as possible to the intersection point, and then hit enter. There we go. And then again, it's just trying to have you help it identify the intersection point. So just hit enter again to put it as close to the intersection point as you can. And here's the intersection. The intersection happens to be at this really ugly value of 13 point, let's round, 0.83, comma, negative 77.26. And this is my solution. How did I find it? I went second calc and chose the intersect function. I gave my calculator some guesses for the line. And then it found it for me. So this is very useful. There's the intersection point. This would have been a good way to check your answers on the test. This is a really good way of checking to see if your answers are correct. Graph the two lines and see if your calculator gives you the correct intersection point. I also said I would show you how to use the table button. So if you just hit second table, table is this one above the graph. If you want to make a table of values, here it is. If you plug in different x's, here is what the y of different functions will be. So our first function, this guy, if I plug in an x of 0, I get a y of 95. And that makes sense because that's the y-intercept, right? Our y-intercept was 95. And then in our second function, I would get the y-intercept of negative 128 when I plug in x of 0. So you can use the table to help you find some values, but of course the x, it only goes by whole numbers right now. Later on, maybe I'll tell you how to make this go in not whole numbers. It has to do with second table set, but that's a job for another video. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hopefully that gives you some info on how you can use your calculator to help you out with these things. And we are going to be using the intersect function in class to shorten our time finding the intersection of two lines. So be prepared. If you don't have a graphing calculator yet, what are you doing? You got to get on that. You know it's a requirement for class. See ya.